Welcome to Belmont Poetry Night. I'm Monica Korde, your host and the Poet Laureate of Belmont, California. We meet on the third Tuesdays of every month to celebrate the spoken word as makers, listeners, and admirers of poetry. We come with featured guests and an open mic inviting readers of all ages. After gathering for several years at our favorite physical venue, the Belmont Library, since the pandemic, our thriving poetry circle has transitioned to this virtual space, and I'm grateful this allows me to welcome poets and listeners from across the globe. It's really good to see you all again, my beloved Poetry Night regulars, and a few first time attendees as well who are new to this space. Thanks everyone for joining us. As many of you know, we begin our poetry nights with a simple tradition, sharing where you're joining from. So I invite you to drop in the chat names of cities, states, or countries that you are zooming in from this evening. And please continue sharing. And thank you again for being here. Well, I think with summer behind us and the kids back in school, August feels like a reflective threshold, inviting us to slow down and really pay attention to the world around us, no matter how difficult or complex or ordinary it is. So that's what inspired this month's theme, which is radical attention. Radical comes from the Latin radix, meaning root, and suggests something that is fundamental or essential or going to the very source of things. And the Latin for attention is attendere, which means to stretch towards, to wait, or to give attention. So when combined, radical attention is a rooted, intentional way of seeing things. And in that vein, I endeavor to cultivate a space tonight where we may practice attention as a deliberate, reflective act, using poetry to bear witness, to interrogate experiences, and to enter into a more rigorous yet tender conversation with the world, perceiving it both with clarity and imaginative depth. And what better way to begin this exploration than with a poem, opening us to attention and presence and the truths it can reveal, right? So, my pick tonight is this subtle yet powerfully written piece by American poet Dorian Locks. And I hope it guides us to the spaces that we are seeking. What's broken? The slate black sky, the middle step of the black porch, and long ago, my mother's necklace, the beads rolling north and south, broken, the rose stem, water into drops, glass knobs on the bedroom door, last summer's spot of parsley and mint, white roots shooting like streamers through the cracks. Years ago, the cat's tail, the bird bath, the car hood's rusted latch, broken, little finger on my right hand at birth. I was pulled out too fast. What hasn't been rent, divided, split, broken into the days, into nights, the night sky into stars, the stars into patterns I make up as I trace them with a broken off blade of grass. Possible, unthinkable, the cricket's tiny back as I lie on the lawn in the dark. My heart, a blue cup, fallen from someone's hands. Thank you. I had been acquainted with Dorian Locke's poetry long before, but I first came across this poem in 2022 when Locke's read it for the Dear Poet project by the Academy of American Poets. And the poet's talent for potent detail really comes through each time you read her. And you must have noticed that here in this piece. For this particular poem, as part of the Dear Poet project, uh, what was interesting was that she also responded sensitively to the many letters that students wrote to her. And in one of the letters, a student asked what her thoughts were behind this poem, to which Dorian Locks wrote back that her thoughts while writing, they began by merely musing on what's broken all around her and how that noticing might lead her to some discovery about herself and others. And in another letter, she also shares that, and I quote her, I do see the world as broken. And she goes on to add that imperfection is part of the human condition. It's so true, isn't it? I really believe that that's how the poem invites us into radical attention, asking us to linger with imperfection, to witness loss and resilience, and to find meaning in the ordinary and those fractured moments that really shape our experiences. And I trust that our guest poet tonight gives voice to this very practice, bringing us into spaces of fragility and resilience and meaning through poems. I'm really delighted to feature Molly Fisk this evening. And I'd like to add here that just like Dorian Locks, Molly Fisk was also part of the Dear Poet project in 2020, responding to student letters with care and insight, speaking about how she writes with the hope that somebody might find comfort or perspective in her poems, which I'm especially grateful for because I did find that in her poetry, which I read during the pandemic and the wildfires around California. So I want to thank you, Molly, for that. And while you need no introduction, I'd like to take a moment to read your bio to our audience. So here it is. Molly Fisk, Poet Laureate Emerita of Nevada County, writes poetry and radio commentary from her home in California's Sierra foothills. Author of The More Difficult Beauty and Everything But the Kitchen Skunk. Among other titles, Fisk edited California Fire and Water, a climate crisis anthology, with a Poets Laureate Fellowship from the Academy of American Poets. Walking Wheel, her collection of linked historical poems, will be out in spring 2026 from Red Hen Press. Congratulations on that, Molly, and a warm welcome to you.
Thank you so much. And guess where I learned to write poetry? In Dorian's living room in Petaluma.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. So my basis, sorry about motorcycles, my basis for writing started with her and her work and her critiquing and her understanding of what I was trying to write and who I was. So thank you so much for reading that poem. I love it.
Thank you. I'm so happy to hear that, Molly. It completes a certain circle in a way. Perfect. Well, take it away. The mic is all yours, Molly.
All right. The way this is structured is I'm going to read a couple of poems and then we have some questions and I'll try to answer them and then we'll go back and read more poems and it will be a layering. This is called Smelling Late Summer. The last peaches and a cardboard half pint of golden raspberries, 10 figs, 4 heirloom tomatoes, a ridiculous name really in these times when legacy advantages are so maligned, but the flavor of them cancels that out entirely. Basil gathered into bouquets, each with a rubber band. I will need pesto in December and March just to survive the weather. This basket Barbara gave me from Oaxaca that everyone admires, sturdy weave and sturdier handle, both longer lasting than the near mismarriage to her son. A mid-chop shuffle to bring soft fruits up and lay corn and onions lower down with the cucumbers, because I never know what I'll want until I see it and don't think about the different weights. I don't think much. I'm smelling late summer over neighborly chatter and listening to guitar arpeggios wafting up the slope from the bookstore patio. Beautiful mushrooms I would never cook or eat. Small ambrosia melons from the valley. All kinds of meat. I should probably become a vegetarian. Walnuts, local olive oil and honey, salmon and shellfish driven here from the coast in a cool pre-dawn dark, while the farmers pack lugs into their trucks. The new parents are again awake, and some of the eldest of us sip our coffee, watch stars fade out, and wait for the towhee's first whistle. I never imagined I would live this long. Everyone else is dreaming. Labor Day recipe. The way at August's end it comes to pass, the edge of your dominant thumbnail turns a brownish green from plucking basil, your olfactory nerves close to screaming, delight or incandescence, at the crush of one more clove of garlic, against whose backdrop Parmesan and pine nuts are as early morning mist, echo, shadow, this side of invisible. Don't forget a little salt, just one grind of pepper. The golden oil swirled in last, binding and gleaming.
Wow, such sensory richness in that first poem, Molly. You can see the lines that have resonated with our folks who are listening here in the chat. They are putting in those lines. I never imagined I would live this long. Everyone else is dreaming. I love that quiet wonder of simply being alive. Such a reflective and profound closing line there. And even the second piece that you read, I would like to quote lines from there. The edge of your dominant thumb turns a brownish green from plucking basil. There's the poet's eye, a recipe for awakening the practice of attention, I'll say. And while gathering my thoughts for our theme tonight, Molly, I came across philosopher Simone Weil's comments saying that attention is the rarest and purest form of generosity, and that attention taken to its highest degree is the same thing as prayer. And I can't help but think that this careful looking is what cultivates the poet's gaze. And in many of your poems, you illuminate the overlooked, whether those are moments or objects or emotions that might otherwise pass us by, really showing us how careful attention can reveal the deeper structures of experience and the subtle dynamics of human perception. And my question then, through the lens of radical attention, is what does the deliberate act of noticing offer both the makers and the readers of poetry, in your view? And how might this practice transform the way we perceive or respond to the world as poets?
I think attention is a very high form of love, and love is a very high form of attention.
Mm.
I made a mistake, I think, of writing down answers to your questions because you sent them to me before, and part of me wants to look at them and see what I thought. And then I was thinking, what am I thinking right now? I think that training yourself to slow down and to look at things more closely, because we're under so much outside pressure right now and have been for decades.
Right.
I really feel that our senses have taken a back seat. And part of what noticing does and paying attention does is to ask us to use our senses again.
Mm,
Often I'm telling my student, especially with Americans are very focused on visual things. And I'm always
mm,
saying, what are you hearing? What can you smell?
mm,
What is the texture of something? Bring in, because this is how human beings relate to each other, is through our senses. So, the rusty latch on Dorian's hood in that poem, I always
mm,
hear when the hood is lifted or closed, that I can hear a scraping sound from that. Lots of the details in many of the poems that are the most sustaining and effective have some kind of relationship with sense so that we can feel or hear or
mm.
something or smell it, the basil and the garlic. Um, so those things are really important to me. And I think everyone can do this. You don't have to be a writer, but I
Yeah.
think that poets, especially because we do it more often, poetry can be a place for people who don't have time to go for a walk in the woods.
Mm.
They can spend 2 minutes reading a poem and get the same kind of solace, at least the idea of it. So that's one of the reasons I think poetry is so valuable.
Absolutely. So beautifully said, Molly. And it makes so much sense because your poems carry that sensory richness along and reveal so many aspects of life. And even the Dorian Locke's poem, it gives us so many thoughts and makes us reflect on certain things, that why was the cup broken, or why was the cat's tail broken. You are thinking of all these questions. So even in your poetry, I feel that it really interrogates and asks these questions, or uh, encourages the reader or the listener to go into a certain space, which is very reflective and deep and thoughtful. So yeah, it makes so much sense, Molly, all the things that you just said and responded to that question. Thank you so much for doing that.
Yeah.
Well, we can hear a couple more poems and then back to a question again.
Okay.
Thank you.
This is called Full Flower Moon Lunar Eclipse. It was me, stepping out the front door every 6 or 8 minutes to look up into a cloudy sky that darkened and opened. Is that a star or reflected streetlight? Where is east? Where does the moon rise at this time of year anyway? And why do I stay indoors when it isn't raining? My eyes are beginning to fail me. I should look harder at everything now to remember it. I have lost my way since the virus arrived to contain us. I have lost my way. Traveler, said Machado in Spanish, there is no path. The path is made by walking. And yet I do not walk. Whatever force holds me still from childhood holds me tightly, saved me, although now I suffer that salvation. And what a long time ago it was, too. Think of the trees now casting shade that I have planted. Think of the miles I've swum. Petrichor. I've taught my entire county to say this word. And if it ever starts to rain at the beginning of a rainy season, I get 472 emails and posts on Facebook saying, Molly, I can smell the petrichor. And if you don't know what it means, but I bet you do, it's that smell from the first drops of rain. And it turns out it's actually the smell of the dirt, the bacteria in the dirt. But Petr means stone and ichor is blood. So it's the blood of stone in a way that I love thinking about. Petrichor, the way a rare night of rain in a bad drought year, under wildfire smoke, will clean your mind of all its low-lying, unacknowledged panic, and you'll walk out at 4 a.m, face turned to the glory of it, tears you haven't cried in a decade, slipping down your cheek, your neck, into the collar of the nightgown you bought to make the pandemic more tolerable. Cotton with pockets and no percent polyester, so in summer heat it doesn't prickle. Thunder cracks to the west, and a theoretical fear of lightning, but you can't see any, and the rain's so cool, the smell so fine, you let yourself forget new starts for a moment. Let tomorrow take care of itself. Pray the rain takes some of the flames down, 30 miles over, flattens the embers, glues the swirling ash to whatever surface it falls on, shatters the bright heart of that 100,000-acre burn, sparing the breathing beings that are left and the 3-generation log cabins, old town canoes upended on docks, the brown trout dozing deep in the crevices, dreaming of mayflies, the lookout towers from which a sharp-eyed kid might spot new wisps at dawn if the clouds lift out of these tricky canyons.
Such gorgeous poetry there, Molly. Really would like to go back to some of the lines that our listeners have noted in the chat. Uh, think of the miles I've swum. I should look harder at everything now. If the clouds lift, okay, it's gone up. Let me go back. If the clouds lift out of these canyons, beautiful lines again, Molly. And I feel there is this sort of melancholy to those poems also, as there is a looking back at things. The poem about the lunar eclipse, I love how you explore the passage of time through attention and memory. And in your poems, I really admire the way your writing leaps and shifts with so much ease, creating a space for silence as well, while also maintaining a strong connection to the reader. And I feel that similar connection when I read Mary Oliver's poetry as well, who's famously said, "Pay attention, be astonished, tell about it." And I read somewhere in one of your interviews as well, you've said, and I quote you, "Writing is not going to save you, but writing can be the way you save yourself." And I
Mhm.
think it captures the power of poetry as a means of self-preservation and reflection also. And I feel in your work there is this conscious and reflective grappling with both personal and universal realities, addressing themes of uh, love and loss to aging and abuse and environmental crisis, like we just heard in Petrichor. And I'm curious, how does this careful attunement to experiences as well as to language and imagery guide your craft? And what challenges arise in balancing authenticity with formal considerations of a poem?
Um, in thinking about that question this afternoon, I felt that I should tell you that you're giving me a lot of credit for planning that isn't actually going on consciously in my head at all. I do a lot of feeling my way, and I really value the mystery of writing and
Mm.
how much I never think to myself, oh, I'm going to write about the third grade. I always start with whatever I'm thinking or feeling in front of me, and it gets to somewhere that I don't know it's going to go.
Mm.
Um, and in terms of authenticity, I really, I feel that I have learned some craft and I recognize what I'm good at. And sometimes I recognize what I'm doing too often and want to shift or stop doing altogether. I talked to Bob Hass one time, Robert Hass, about saying, I can write a beautiful poem about flowers in my sleep. It's driving me. I can't write about other things. Hass said, welcome.
I love that.
So if I were asked to choose between authenticity and craft, I would always choose authenticity
Mm.
because lying in general gives me a stomach ache. And if I find myself doing it in a poem or exaggerating or talking about something I don't really know what it is, but which is a habit I have in general,
Mm.
I can't do that. I have to either go look something up or leave the whole thing aside. Um,
Mm.
and I was going to tell you that someone is calling us. Um, I was going to tell you that my mother was, she was an artist later in life, but she had an artist's eye the whole time she was raising us. And she
Mm.
taught us, all four kids, to look at the underside of a leaf if we were on a walk, to look at
Mm.
fabric at the fabric store, to look at the backside, to identify all the colors of green we could see if we were on a walk together. So I had this referencing all the time of someone who could see things that were beautiful and interesting to her. And I
Mm.
totally absorbed that. I mean, I really have her to thank for lots of my ideas and my sensibilities in terms of what I write about.
Mm.
Um,
Mm. Yeah, I hear you, Molly. Absolutely. And I feel that there is, of course, this authenticity that just comes through oozing through your poetry, and it's you do it effortlessly. I think the crafting of the poem, which I feel that on the page when you're looking at the poem as well, there is that consideration of the poem of how it appears on the page, but I love how you mold it so beautifully and naturally that it when you're reading it, even in your delivery, I hear that musicality or movement in the lines themselves that comes naturally. And I also remember reading somewhere you mentioned that you try not to use words that you may otherwise not use in your everyday language. So, like petrichor, for example, but it's absolutely fine to put it in a title, right? And I love that you've taken it into the title and how you've given it a beautiful new meaning with the wildfires around, and you've placed it in the real context that we have. So thank you so much for sharing that, Molly. We are listening and taking notes. I'm sure everybody is doing that.
I cannot possibly look at any kind of chat situation when I'm the person who's doing the reading, but thank you all for making remarks and I'll look at it later.
Thank you, Molly. Let's hear a few more.
Okay. This is called Summer Lightning. It's the one from Dear Poet. In the morning, while it's still cool, we hose down the yard, watch a red sun crest the ridge, haloed in wildfire smoke that drifted 200 miles and stalled here against the mountains. A housefly is walking across the table, 6 tiny feet leaving tracks in the yogurt. One cat has already eaten a hummingbird. If you think about joy long enough, maybe death will make sense. A matter of balance. The deer caught in that fire outside Redding, the rabbits and bear cubs, king snakes, and you know when 30 boats melt at anchor in Whiskey Town, fish in that lake have perished. Displaced blue herons, mergansers. I am not asking forgiveness for the hummingbird. I plant the flowers and water them. Who else would come for their nectar? And what cat wouldn't leap at the chance? In this world, there is order wherever you look, cause, effect, logic, consequence. A dry winter and a car backfire or summer lightning ignites just one branch, which bends in the wind the flames create to brush another. A few hours later, it's 45 square miles and uncontained. The fire jumps the river after supper, headed downtown, and cars crawl away from their homes in a dark lit by headlights and flung sparks, chased by the crackle and gathering roar, song of a small city burning. Satiety. Because the cord of wood we stacked together, and sunlight through its chinks like stars. Because thistle seed having overflowed the feeder. Because only on some mornings the hawk screams from a standing dead pine. Because ice lingering on our tiny pond. Because intermittent hard rain and water in diagonal sheets across the road. Because again the house cat bathing her forepaws as well as my wrist. And other poets working hard too at their different desks, choosing, reconsidering. Because the mild stink of sourdough starter from the kitchen. Because a new mottled red scarf I knit myself and some old purple mittens. Because dormant blackberry canes, snow at higher elevations, the bare arms of persimmon and dogwood buds already in place. Because February and later March and the whole human race.
Wow. Such inspiring pieces, Molly. I love because poems, all because poems are wonderful, and this was such a beautifully flowing one from one thing to another, and so visually rich as well. Both of these poems, the lines that really stayed with me from the initial piece you read. If you think about joy long enough, maybe death will make sense, a matter of balance. And there's something very interesting about balance in poetry. And I can feel that uh, through all the poems that you've shared so far as well, how you maintain that fine balance uh, between what poetry does for us and how poetry makes us feel. And another poet whom I admire is Diane Seuss, who has said that poetry for her is an instigator. The terms of engaging with writing poems instigate in her, demand something from her, and a sort of an honest confrontation from herself with the world as she sees it. And just like you said, Molly, that you really put all the things that are around you or that you see and observe, you put all of that in your poetry. And to switch gears a little bit, something that you do remarkably so well is working on radio waves. And I feel that, speaking of attention, your work as a poet and a radio commentator, that has really fascinated me. And I think you, going back to another of your interviews, and I quote from there, where you've said, there's more room in poetry for open space, silence, big leaps of understanding. In radio, dead air is frowned on, so you have to kind of rush right along most of the time. And I believe you do the 3 minute micro essays on radio, which I would love to hear more about. But my question is that radio and poetry both are such intimate mediums and demand a kind of attentive storytelling. What draws you to each medium, and how do you navigate the different rhythms and the pressures of capturing attention in sound versus on the page?
I've been thinking about this today because I really want poems to have their due as spoken, not just on the page. So I was thinking about, I write down the essays for radio and then I read them.
Mm,
but people hear them and they're in a podcast format on the station's website. So it's all auditory unless you're on my Patreon page and then you see them written. And
mm,
I write on the page. I'm not somebody who thinks up lines and then keeps trying to remember them. I really do it visually.
mm,
And saying them is really important to me. And when I was starting out, Dorianne used to laugh because I wrote so much in dactyls, which is the waltz rhythm. And I
right.
find myself doing that. I'll get through halfway through a poem and suddenly I'll think, oh my God, the whole thing is in dactyls. Well, I can't stop now. I have to keep going in dactyls. So the sound aspect of it is really important to me,
Mm,
but so is how a poem looks on the page.
mm,
Um, and the radio commentary is called Observations from a Working Poet. So I get to
mm,
bring in all kinds of poetry, all kinds of stuff about language, um, which is why I like doing it so much. Uh, the essays have taught me more about editing than I ever knew I was going to learn, because 3 minutes is 3 minutes and it can't be 3.27 minutes. So you
mm.
have to learn how to take a sentence and turn it inside out and say the same thing and just do it in a different, shorter way. It's been amazing. But I have written almost 700 of those things and
Wow.
over 20 years. So I know exactly, I don't think about it. I sit down and then something comes up and I write about it. Um, with poetry, I feel that poetry is my real work and the essays are recess a little bit.
Mm,
Be a lot funnier. I can be stranger. The poetry comes from a deeper place in me, but both of them, many people in my town like me and they like me because of the radio. And often they'll say, that was a great poem you had on the radio last night. And it
mm.
wasn't a poem, it was an essay. And I had to sort of teach myself not to mind that everybody thought everything that came out of my mouth was a poem. Um,
Right.
so I juggle the two, and it's been really interesting to have them both as practices. Um, and sometimes I'll take a subject and write a poem about it and then move it over and write an essay about it. But they're so different. They're
Mm.
just different animals.
Yeah, I hear that in your work, Molly, and I said fascinating because that's what is so interesting, how you dive into both these genres and mediums, and they are so different, but the way you talk about poetry as work and going into a deeper space versus writing the essays for the radio, which allows you to let yourself go a little bit and live in those smaller moments at the same time. And I love that aspect of radio and poetry that you juggle and balance together so beautifully. Are there any takeaways for you from both of those?
Well, they're both short forms. I shudder at the idea of having to write a novel and remember who's got what color shoes. And I mean, I'm just not that, my brain doesn't live that way. So the short form is what I am drawn to.
Mm. Has Molly, this just came to me, but I was wondering if reading on the radio has also influenced reading poetry or vice versa, just the reading of it or recitation of it.
I don't know. I've always been a pretty good reader. People who talk to me on the phone in college would say, you got to be on the college radio station. And this is nothing to do with me. My parents gave me a good voice and I haven't ruined it yet. So like it. I'm glad everybody likes it. But I think I slow down more to read poems and
Mm,
I'm not as slow. I'm more conversational and a little more, it's not acting, but I'm a little more vivacious with the
mm,
stuff. Partly because I'm trying to keep people's attention. You don't know how fast people will turn the dial. So
right.
part of the job of radio is to not let them go. And
Perfect.
Poetry, you really want to leave some open space so people can feel what you're saying.
Mm.
I did that all the time on the radio. I could do it for one poem, but if I did that all the time, people would just leave. So
Well, I'm so glad, Molly, that you have that innate skill within you to hold everyone's attention, whether it's in poetry or in essays on the radio. And for those who are interested, Molly's radio commentary, Molly, please correct me if I'm wrong, but Observations from a Working Poet runs on the community station KVMR FM, Nevada City, California, and it airs for 3 minutes every Friday, closing out the news hour at 6:25 p.m. Pacific time.
just changed like last week. It's
It
at
did
8:06 on Friday mornings now.
8:06 on Friday mornings. And what's the frequency, Molly?
It's 89.5 here in Nevada County, and it's kvmr.org online everywhere.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for sharing that. Well, on that note, let's hear a couple more poems.
All right. This is called When the Bruises Bloom. When the bruises bloom, it's the second day after the fall, not the immediate minutes and blood, but no broken bones or sprains, no concussion. Your head didn't even hit the ground, just one shoulder, a forearm sliced in places, the top few layers of skin stripped back and then laid over again. So your sister, when you sent her the gory photo, told you to get that dirt washed out, but it was only blood seeping, a field of tiny holes through the epidermis, and there hadn't been dirt. You fell on the last concrete step to the side, the left, the laundry basket bouncing onto a bench, it seems, and you, or part of you, into a bed of spent tomatoes, where two metal solar lights were dumped, and a conch shell from some yard sale in Massachusetts you've kept for years. But why? Its creamy shade, its unlikeliness here in the mountains, some reminder you come from water the way we all have, ancient fish acquiring legs, tadpoles of history, maybe, salamanders. This is the shock coming on. It's fine. Your mind is allowed to wander, but maybe get up now, can you? Careful. And take that bleeding into the kitchen to run under the tap and blot with paper napkins the way your mother used to. Call a friend who'll remind you of ice, or in this case, a bag of frozen corn, though you can't reach your own back and have to wedge yourself gingerly into a chair to hold it there, and then press the cubes wrapped in a dish towel with birds on it along your knee and shin. It's so awkward, it's ridiculous. A yoga pose from hell, but you sit quietly anyway, only shaking a little, thinking about how strange, how quickly, and gravity, wondering what really happened, not being dead. And this is called Farmer's Market. We'll take you back to the beginning poem and the same place. Farmer's Market. Yesterday, I was so lonely I could barely walk, my friend being mobbed by her grandchildren as we made our way past the farmer's market's delicata squashes, the last tomatoes. I couldn't think what to buy, came home with nothing but sweet peppers, myriad colors in a single flavor, an elusive solitary note. I watched her lay her cheek against their downy faces, saying, love, 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 and would have wept, except I'm dry of tears. I love how she loves them and that she has them. I love them all from my arm's length distance, half familiar grandmother's friend with a laughing eye, glasses one might want to pluck from the top of her head. All that touch, that flesh, the body heat, fingers woven together. I am starving.
Thank you, Molly, for those beautiful poems again. Uh, I believe you have one more poem to offer to us, or uh,
Switched it around, so I'm done now.
okay. Well, with my concluding question, however, I'd like to take a moment to reflect on something that Jane Hirschfield said, and I'll quote her here. We live in an outward facing time, but not everything can happen on YouTube. Some poetry, at least, must continue to preserve the interiority that allows the heart and mind its more tentative and more tender experiments. And I believe your work does that with so much care, Molly, drawing from your experiences as a poet laureate and a teacher. What tools or practices would you say are most essential for building a community where poetry is not just written and read, but truly valued and kept alive with that interiority that Hirschfield talks about?
I'm not sure that one person can do that. I think it requires a lot of people. Um, in my county, there are many poets and there are many good poets, and there aren't always readings all over the place. But over the years, people understand that there is a strong line of poetry that goes through this place.
Mm,
I think I think having a radio show is a very good idea. I
mm,
think getting poetry to people in however you can. The new Poets Out Loud, it's not new anymore, but the Poets Out Loud um, program for high school reciters and poetry in the schools, which is one of the things I started doing long ago. Um, and it's a wonderful thing. I still talk to people who are now in their 40s who I taught poetry to, and they remember the poems and remember doing the writing. And so part of it is just kind of spilling as much poetry as you can everywhere you can.
mm,
Poet laureate. I'm not the poet laureate of the county, but for years I've been the poet laureate for different restaurants.
mm.
One is in Utah, but one is in Nevada City. And they just turned 11. They had their 11th birthday. And I wrote them a poem for their 11th birthday. And we printed it on orange paper for Taylor Swift and it all over the counters and tables. And people know who I am and they come talk to me if they have a question about poetry or their kid wants to be a writer or whatever. It's about giving it away all the time. Um, there's a nice thing they do in Boston. I don't know how they figured out how to do this, but I want to figure it out for us, which is that they write on the sidewalk and you can't see it until it rains. And
Oh.
they write lines of poetry here and there on the sidewalk. So that's my next prank that I would like to give my friends, my people in Nevada County.
I love that, a petrichor of poems,
Yeah,
right? Then we can call it. I love the idea, and uh, keep giving is what you've been doing, Molly. And as a poet laureate of restaurants, I love that idea. How fun! That sounds super fun. But I feel genuinely that your poetry doesn't just ask us to see. It really and truly teaches us how to inhabit each moment fully and how. And we've heard it tonight and witnessed it through your poems. So thank you so much for your attentive and lyrical gaze, Molly, uh, opening up a space where the ordinary becomes so luminous, like the basil and the pesto. So grateful for your presence and poetry tonight.
thank you,
Thank you.
Monica. Thank you so much for your nice big brain and your wonderful questions.
So kind of you, Molly. But before we close our featured segment and move on to the open mic portion of our evening, I'd like to give the audience a quick minute to share a word with you. So, everyone, we may not have time for audience questions. Just you can put them in the chat for Molly to read later. But please go ahead and share your thoughts with her while I put some links to her website and books that you can find. You can find that all the links in the chat. Please go ahead and unmute yourself.
Maybe just a round of applause that can actually be heard.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was really wonderful.
Yeah.
Beautiful
I appreciate so much.
poetry.
Quite beautiful.
I appreciate your just plain spokenness, you know, the not using words you wouldn't usually use, that sort of thing. I like that.
Many of your poems resonated with me, Molly. I love the farmers market, so I was just sucking in all of your farmers market poems. They were beautiful. Thank you.
I'm glad.
Well, you really make the world come alive, Molly. You really diligently watch everything. And so often we blind ourselves. So thanks for that. Waking up us.
Thank you so much.
Your work reminds me of Mary Oliver in the way that you look at things so deeply, and it was just wonderful and delicious. I really, really appreciate them. Everyone you read was fantastic.
Thank you so much. She saved my life, that one.
I'll just say, because I think maybe you don't see the chat, is I love how it's like you're a magician and you make magic with everyday words. And then it makes me realize how our normal lives are beautiful. So thank you.
Oh, and they are. Yep.
It was
All
wonderful
right.
again to hear your voice, Molly. Molly is my teacher for a long time, and I'm just so happy every time I get to hear you read.
Good. I'm so glad you're here. Okay.
All right then. Thanks everyone. It's so wonderful always to hear all the sweet and wonderful and kind comments keep coming. Thank you everyone for sharing that in the chat and taking the moment as well. And once again, thank you, Molly. It was an absolute pleasure hosting you and being in dialogue with you. And I really hope you enjoyed this reading experience.
Absolutely.
Can we unmute and like clap in real time? Would that be okay?
It's fine with me.
Okay, everybody unmute. Let's give her some love. Yay!
Yay!
What a fantastic poet.
Thank you, Molly.
Thank you, Shauna, for taking lead on that. Love that. Keep the love coming, just like that. But for now, Molly, you can just rest easy and relax. I shall invite you again at the end of our open mic segment to offer us a closing poem. With that, we are going to stop recording this segment. Those of you who are in the Zoom room, please stay online for the open mic segment of the evening. And to the YouTube audience, thanks for joining in and hope to see you for next month's virtual Belmont Poetry Night. Good night.